Our normal host is on vacation and left me to tell my own story of my life changing AI planned dream trip of a lifetime. I didn't want to tell this tale, but I guess neither did he. You wait your entire life for one dream vacation. Australia, New Zealand, French Polynesia, and Hawaii wrapped into a trans Pacific cruise. A retirement present to myself. What could possibly go wrong? With me and with AI, apparently quite a lot. But not in the way you might think. About 4 years ago, I almost booked a Hawaii to Vancouver cruise. My parents had retired in Hawaii years ago and passed away a few years later, and I hadn't been back in over 10 years. I wanted to go back, but since it was such a long trip, I didn't want to go just for the day. Since I loved cruises, I tried planning a cruise from Hawaii to Vancouver, but then canceled that trip because there were too many days at sea and I thought I would go absolutely stir crazy. Then I saw a Sydney to Hawaii itinerary, New Zealand and French Polynesia in between. Instant bucket list. I booked it and told myself this would be my last big cruise before retiring. A retirement present for myself. It was an 18-day cruise with about 12 sea days in total, much worse than the first trip I had planned. How was I going to survive all of those sea days? With AI gaining in popularity a few years ago, I decided that I would use AI to help me plan my trip and make it less boring. I would use AI to help me plan every aspect of the trip, from where to stay, when to get there, when to sleep to eat. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, I admit now that I'm writing this, the idea was a little insane, but I had really embraced AI right from the beginning, so I thought there was nothing wrong with that idea. If you saw my first video, Understanding AI in 2025, you will remember there was a prompt of planning a trip to Disney. Well, I wasn't going to let AI plan a trip to the other side of the planet, where I had never gone before without testing it out. I was going to Disney soon, and I hadn't been there in a long time. I knew the rules had changed with multiple parks, with lightning lanes, new rules, tickets, special parades, enough to make your head spin. I figured if AI could make sense of that trip and do a good job, it should be able to do a trip that was in an environment I didn't know. As you saw, it took a while for me to get a decent plan, but I eventually did. I flew down to Disney with plan in hand, ready to go. Unfortunately, the plan did not take into account the heat, the rain, and apparently I get really cranky when I'm hot, tired, and wet. I guess that was an AI planning fail. Okay, Disney using AI was a fail. I had watched every YouTube video on Disney and had AI plan Disney, and it didn't go as planned. There was somebody with us who knew Disney and knew how to deal with us, and if it wasn't for her, it would have been a total disaster, but that is for another story. How was I going to not make the same mistakes? Apparently the prompts still weren't enough. The problem is, you don't know what you don't know, so how could I improve my prompts? I knew when I was leaving Sydney because I was leaving on a booked cruise, so that date was fixed. I normally arrive the day before any cruise, and I knew the flight was going to be over 25 hours, so I knew I had to leave a few days early. Then I had to take jet lag into consideration. Then I didn't want to fly halfway around the world and not visit Sydney. I ended up watching weeks of YouTube videos to figure out a list of things I wanted to do. I then gave that list to ChatGPT to try to figure out how to do this stuff on the list, between the budget, the flight time, and how much time that I could take off work, and the international dateline. We figured we would have to leave on Tuesday, land on Thursday morning, and we would have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to tour Sydney, and our cruise left on Sunday. Now, I let AI try to find flights to Sydney and then flights from Hawaii back home. Both tasks were epic fails. AI kept insisting there were nonstop flights that I could take. Yes, there was one nonstop experimental flight that happened a few years ago that happened from the East Coast to Sydney, but that flight didn't exist. There is also a flight from Hawaii to the East Coast that was nonstop, but it didn't fly in April. For some reason, AI knew the dates, but still gave me fake flights at fake prices. Ugh, more work that I needed to figure out myself. I ended up finding the hotel myself by doing my own research on YouTube. My travel agent handled the details of working with the hotel because I didn't know what could go wrong, and I definitely trusted my travel agent more than AI since AI was failing so badly. Whew. Okay. Now I had a flight, hotel, and dates. Surely AI could now go through my list and figure out a decent plan for me. Of course not. But it was my fault. AI hit the ground running and packed my days. It was Disney all over again, running from place to place without a break and no consideration of jet lag. My fault. I didn't give it enough information. Armed with my Disney lessons, I started building my Sydney revised schedule with ChatGPT. I gave it my flight details, including about 25 hours of travel, and that I do not sleep on planes, my hotel location, and my non-negotiables, including the Opera House tour, the zoo, the Sydney Tower, a proper steak dinner, and genuinely good coffee that I had heard about on YouTube. Every night after work, I'd refine the schedule with AI, then go to YouTube to sanity check and make corrections. I did not want another Disney scramble. I was pretty sure that I was going to retire in 2 years, and I am a crazy person that loves to work. A lot of my friends had already retired, and they loved retirement. They were playing golf, hanging out with the grandbabies, and traveling. That was not going to work for me. I want to do some light work, maybe do some programming and part-time consulting. I loved AI and home automation, so I thought I would focus on those two things. My thought was I would create a YouTube channel on technology and do videos on AI, home automation, my home lab, and other new technology that may come up over the next few years. Since I was doing this Sydney trip, I would document this trip and I would make a video on AI planning a trip of a lifetime. It could be a 2-part video where the first part showed the planning process and the second part would be how did the trip go and was AI successful. Then I started coming up with a bunch of ideas for other videos and I started to put them on an outline. I also decided with all of these sea days, I would be bored silly, and those would be the perfect days for me to work on those scripts. As the trip got closer, I decided to ignore AI's advice on going to sleep earlier each night to minimize jet lag. I thought to myself, I live in the real world, and a grown man was not going to sleep at 8 p.m. because an AI told him to.
The flight to Australia was uneventful. Being a huge Marvel fan, I decided to rewatch one of my favorite shows, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1. I had forgotten Tahiti was discussed a lot in Season 1, and the nerd in me asked ChatGPT to design a Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. inspired tour of Tahiti. Those who watched that season know that things didn't quite go as planned in Tahiti, and let's say it wasn't too much different for me, but I am getting ahead of myself. I made it to Sydney with no sleep and no drama. AI's first day treat yourself gently plan was spot on. I wore sunglasses as suggested and had a slow morning at the hotel with a light breakfast and taking it easy. Oh my God, the YouTube videos didn't exaggerate on how great coffee was in Australia. I took a brief nap at noon and then I woke up a few hours before dinner. I could see the steakhouse from my window, but I asked the AI what my plans for tonight were. When it told me about my 2 dinners, I knew I was in trouble. Fortunately, I had the schedule in my head and other parts of my schedule written on a calendar, so I wasn't in horrible shape. It seemed that the AI's memory had gotten corrupted with somebody else's schedule. Well, isn't that special? I was about to have an excellent steakhouse sunset dinner, looking at the Sydney Harbor and the iconic Sydney Opera House. No AI mistake was going to ruin this day. Finally, it was the morning of boarding our Trans-Pacific cruise. It was 6 ports and about 12 sea days. For the sea days, I was planning on writing a lot of my scripts for the YouTube videos and continue to flesh out my post-retirement business plans. AI had my cruise schedule. I didn't rely on it because it was usually wrong. Keeping track of a schedule, not for AI. Use a calendar. New Zealand was beautiful, not as hectic as Sydney, so AI was safely tucked away from making any weird suggestions. Other than helping me plan my future, AI could not ruin this trip. I was on my once-in-a-lifetime cruise, headed for French Polynesia. Finally, after 4 sea days with no land in sight, we make it to French Polynesia. I woke up okay that morning, not quite myself, but not too bad. By noon, I was sick. Not cruise bug sick, the kind of sick where you don't want to get out of bed and you want to be left alone. I had to see the first stop in French Polynesia from my bed, hoping I would get better by tomorrow, because we would be in Tahiti. After sleeping almost 12 hours, I was actually worse than I was the day before. There was nothing that AI could do. There was nothing the ship's doctor could do. All I could do was look from my balcony at the place I wanted to see all of my life.
I guess AI couldn't plan or fix this.
A few days later, long after the looking at the beauty of the islands of French Polynesia from my balcony and thinking of all the YouTube videos I had watched of everything I could do, I was finally starting to feel normal again. It was a beautiful morning in the middle of the South Pacific, and that's when my phone lit up with a series of texts from home. AI could not have planned for what happened next.
Digital beeps rising. Hit the future with every beat. My high-tech life, feel the beat. Innovation, charge, move your feet. My high-tech life so complete. My high-tech life amplified.